While another world war, which especially with the arsenals of nuclear weapons in the hands of the US and Russia, China, and some other countries, could lead to destruction and death on a massive scale, and could even bring about the extinction of the human race. While this has so far been avoided, so long as the capitalist imperialist system continues to dominate the world, and the profound divisions this embodies and enforces continue to exist, the danger remains of a far more devastating war than anything previously endured by humanity. Only through the overthrow of this system, including in its greatest centers of power in the imperialist countries themselves, an overthrow carried out also with the aim of preventing these imperialists from launching an all-out war of annihilation. Only in this way can we advance toward the goal of overcoming the divisions among human beings that embody exploitation and oppression and lead to violent conflict, and finally make a reality of the dreams and aspirations of so many for a world without war.
That was the revolutionary leader Bob Avakian from his 2018 talk, Why We Need an Actual Revolution and How We Could Really Make Revolution. Revolution, real revolution, for the goal of emancipating all humanity is what the show you are watching is all about. And Bob Avakian is a revolutionary leader who has developed a new framework for how we meaning humanity all over the world, can get free from the killing madness of the system we live under, and through a real revolution bring about a radically different and far better world. So let me welcome you to the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. This is our 123rd episode on October 13th, 2022. My name is Andy Z. I'm the host of the show, coming to you from Los Angeles, California. War that could lead to unthinkable horrors. The uprising in Iran, and in relation to both events, the need for real revolution, for the emancipation of people all over the world, will be the main subject matter of this episode of the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. There is the horror and the madness of the one-upmanship of imperialist rivals, Russia and the US, squaring off with no regard for the lives and the future of humanity. And then there is the inspiration, the heroism, and the example of the people of Iran rising in righteous struggle to find batons, prison, water cannons, bullets, rubber and live, with scores murdered, thousands imprisoned in horrendous conditions, with torture and beatings reportedly routine. The RNL Revolution Nothing Less show does not accept the world as it is. We ask these three questions about everything. What is going on? Why is it happening? And what and where are the interests of humanity in every major event in the world? This is applying a scientific method and approach to the huge, seemingly unsolvable problems that humanity confronts. We bring the way to fight through these problems that we face, problems that reside in the system we live under, capitalism, imperialism. The way out of the madness of today can only be through an actual revolution for the goal of overcoming all forms of exploitation and oppression all over the world, for the purpose of creating a world where people everywhere could flourish and be responsible caretakers of the earth we live on. This scientific approach is concentrated in those three questions. This method and the strategy to make and win a revolution for the goal of emancipating humanity has been developed by Bob Avakian, B.A. It is why we follow his leadership on this show, and we invite and struggle with you to do so too. There is no other way out, no other solution to the terrible future that is barreling down on the world short of a real and emancipating revolution. There is a commonality with both of our key stories that on the one hand makes me burn with anger, and on the other underscores the import of what we do here on the RNL show. This is one theme and a struggle that will run through today's RNL program. I will pose this as a question here. How do masses of people in the US understand what their government, what their country, which is the top dog and oppressor in the world today, has done since its founding and continues to do, that if not stopped, will lead to unbelievable catastrophe. And on the other hand, and at the same time, how do masses of people see their relationship to the people of Iran and their heroic struggle? My co-host Sunsara Taylor will speak to this in relation to Iran, and our regular contributor to the RNL show, Rafael Kadaris, will speak about our responsibility to act to stop the dangerous trajectory things are on in relation to the war in Ukraine. And I'm also going to pose here that when we speak of our responsibility on this show, when we speak of what we need to understand and do, we are speaking first of all of the most oppressed people of the world as a whole, as well as everyone who cares about justice and everyone who yearns for a world without exploitation and oppression, all who desire a society where the earth and its climate are sustained. Listening to this, you might think, well, that's me. But is it? Or does your we begin and end with your block, your hood, your people, your gender, your country, and in the final analysis, you? If it doesn't, well, that's a good start. But then you need to get with the revolution and the leadership we have. And if you already follow this show and Bob Avakian and our website, revcom.us, then go deeper and take more responsibility now to build the movement we need for an actual revolution. But if your we does stop short of understanding your role as part of world humanity, of the nearly 8 billion people of the world, then you will end up going along with all those horrors that are afoot. And what you really need is what the RNL show brings. To provoke and to challenge you as we get into today's program, listen to this excerpt from Bob Avakian's major work for this time, Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating, that lays out two ways of thinking about and two roads for acting in the face of the situation we confront that we refer to as the insteads.
It is the responsibility of everyone who recognizes the profound need for revolution and the rare possibility in a time like this to actually make revolution, to wage a tireless and at times fierce struggle to win more and more people to make a radical rupture with the confining and degrading terms of this system, and to take up and act on the revolutionary orientation and motivation that is put forward in the declaration and call. Instead of staying in your lane and going for self,
I stay in my lane.
Always put you first.
While this system is moving to even more decisively crush any hope for a world worth living in, people need to be looking at the bigger picture, focusing on the greater interests of humanity and the possibility for a far better world, and acting to make this a reality. Instead of finding excuses to go along with the way things have been, standing apart from or even bad-mouthing the revolution.
Oh, they're fucking RevCom? God damn it, dude!
People need to get with this revolution and not throw away the rare opportunity to be part of bringing something much better into being. Instead of lashing out with individual acts of frustration or attempts to take on this system with small, isolated forces that have no chance of succeeding, people need to pour their anger and their hatred of injustice into building a movement of millions that could have a real chance to defeat this system and make a real revolution. Instead of fighting and killing each other, what people need to be doing now is uniting to defend each other, opposing all unjust violence, not launching attacks on anyone, but at the same time, not allowing the police or civilian fascist thugs to wantonly brutalize and murder people. And people need to do this as part of building up the forces for revolution. Instead of snarking and sniping at each other and being divided by identities, people should be working to unite everyone from every part of society who can be united in the fight against oppression and injustice, with the goal of putting an end to this system that is the source of this oppression and injustice. Instead of being a tail on the democratic donkey, with its attempt to keep this monstrous system going and to deal with the growing fascist danger by relying on the normal procedure of this system and doomed efforts to heal the divisions that are deepening every day. People need to work for the revolution that is urgently needed and deal with the fascist danger as part of doing that.
Instead of all the exit ramps of confronting the reality we face and the responsibility that falls to us in this moment in history, stay with us on this show. Spread this show far and wide. Go to revcom.us and get deeply into the work of Bob Avakian and get in touch with the revolution clubs. And as Bob Avakian said, quote, work for the revolution that is urgently needed, end quote. Our first and next segment will be Rafael speaking about the danger posed by the war in Ukraine. And next week, October 20th, episode number 124, we're going to have a very special feature on how to understand the stakes of what is going on with the war in Ukraine, what is going on with Biden and the Democrats' provocations against China, and what are the interests of humanity in relation to all this that you do not want to miss. So let's go to Rafael.
Imagine if the most bloodthirsty gangsters in the world kidnapped and threatened to kill your child. What would you do? Would you ignore it? Would you sit around hoping these gangsters come to their senses? Would you root them on? Or would you do everything you could to rescue your child and knock down every obstacle in your way? Well, two of the biggest and most murderous gangsters are not just holding your child hostage, they're holding the world hostage and threatening to kill millions of children, if not all the children on the planet.
The president warning the risk of nuclear Armageddon has not been this high since the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Risk of nuclear Armageddon in today's massive explosion of the only bridge connecting Russia with the annexed territory of Crimea.
The House has approved a $40 billion aid package for Ukraine. Money for military, largest single military package yet for Ukraine.
We want to see Russia weakened.
Russia's annexation of occupied territory in Ukraine.
Armageddon, nuclear Armageddon.
Armageddon, nuclear war.
Это не блеф.
It's at this moment that Biden, when speaking at a Democratic Party fundraiser in New York, said, "We have not faced the prospect of Armageddon since Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis. I don't think that there's any such thing as the ability to easily use a tactical nuclear weapon and not end up with Armageddon. For the first time since the Cuban Missile Crisis, we have the threat of a nuclear weapon, if in fact things continue to go down the path they are going. We're trying to figure out, what is Putin's off-ramp? Where does he find a way out?" Now, you might think that Biden is really sounding the alarm about nuclear war in order to prevent it. And from what Biden is saying, you'd think Russia is the only one pushing things in this direction. This is complete bullshit. I have 4 points to make about this. 1. Biden is preparing you to accept the possibility of a nuclear war that could end humanity. He compares the situation to the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. Well, the president at that time, John F. Kennedy, said the danger of nuclear war with Russia was 50-50. Think about those odds, and the fact that we're in a moment like that now. But does Biden say that there's absolutely no way that this can be allowed to happen, and he'll do everything in his power to back off from the brink, disarm his nuclear weapons, and work with Russia to stop this? No. He says this is the path things are on. Now, think about his use of the term Armageddon. This is a word that comes from the Bible and refers to the final battle between good and evil. And of course, we're all supposed to assume the US are the good guys in this scenario. Armageddon means a catastrophic conflict, a battle that could end the human race and destroy the world. And that is exactly what could happen if a nuclear war broke out between the US and Russia. Each of them have thousands of nuclear weapons, and many of these are hundreds and even thousands of times more powerful than the ones the US dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which instantly incinerated tens of thousands of civilians in the fireball and shockwaves, and killed tens of thousands more from the lethal radiation. In other words, these two countries have more than enough firepower to annihilate much of life on this planet many times over. The fact that the leader of the only country ever to use nuclear weapons, armed to the teeth with nukes and the capability of using them anywhere in the world, is talking in terms like these should be an electric shock and a wake-up call. But most people have their head in the sand, acting like it's not even happening. Or they're just hoping it works out, acting like there's nothing that can be done about it. Or they're egging this on, calling for Biden to go even harder against Putin. This is completely irresponsible. It is gambling with the lives of billions. Do you really want to look back from amidst the rubble and radiation, if you survive, and regret not having done more to stop the rulers of this system from doing what they clearly said they might do? Seriously, people need to wake the fuck up. 2. Let's look at why Biden is saying that if Russia uses a tactical nuclear weapon, we could end up with Armageddon. So-called tactical nukes are usually described as smaller, with a more limited range of destruction. So how could that lead to Armageddon? For one thing, Russia and the US have tactical nukes that are actually more powerful than the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Second, and even more importantly, we are dealing with two gangster imperialist countries battling each other for world domination. And just like the gangsters in the street, you have to show strength, not weakness in the face of the enemy. If your enemy infringes on what you consider to be your turf, not only do you have to retaliate, if you want to achieve dominance, you have to escalate. For example, we've heard retired General David Petraeus float out this possible response to a Russian nuclear strike on Ukraine.
Just to give you a hypothetical, we would respond by leading a NATO, a collective effort that would take out every Russian conventional force that we can see and identify on the battlefield in Ukraine and also in Crimea and every ship in the Black Sea fleet.
Do you really think the US could escalate in this way, dealing crippling blows to Russia's non-nuclear military capabilities without Russia escalating further, using the one game-changing weapon they would still have? This kind of talk is playing with fire. And you hear this kind of thing all the time from people who've been indoctrinated to think like the US imperialists. People say, we can't back down because that's letting Putin use nuclear blackmail. This is the logic of a system that's willing to destroy humanity before it backs down. As Bob Avakian put it, humanity cannot afford any longer to allow these imperialists on any side to continue to rule the world and battle over who will dominate in this situation, with the very real and dire threat this poses to the future and the very existence of humanity. And by the way, just who the hell is this we in these kinds of comments? Do you really want to see yourself as part of the worst gangsters in human history? Of course, if you do nothing to stop them, if you turn your head away or keep your head down, then I guess you actually are part of the we that's going headlong in a potentially horrific direction. But is that really who you want to be? Is that who humanity needs you to be? Think about it. 3. When Biden says we are trying to figure out what is Putin's off-ramp, where does he find a way out? This makes Biden seem like the reasonable one, and Putin is the irrational aggressor. But someone should ask Biden, where's his off-ramp? If he's so concerned about a way out, why does he keep funneling billions of dollars of weapons to Ukraine? Why doesn't he call for immediate peace negotiations? Why doesn't he declare unconditionally that the US will not use nuclear weapons? In reality, both sides are deeply committed to their strategic objectives, and neither side can easily back down. Since the fall of the Soviet Union, the US has been expanding its military alliance, NATO, further and further east, seeking to encircle Russia militarily. Meanwhile, the Russian imperialists are trying to challenge the dominant position of the US and prevent Ukraine from joining NATO and further encircling Russia. Now, with this invasion, the US sees a big opportunity to weaken Russia and has been backing the Ukrainians to this end.
The House has approved a $40 billion aid package for Ukraine. Money for military.
Largest single military package yet for Ukraine.
We want to see Russia weakened.
The fact is, neither side has an off-ramp from their conflicting objectives. Both sides are pushing things to an even more dangerous situation. And here I want to briefly critique something Noam Chomsky said on Democracy Now! Earlier this week. In this interview, Chomsky did sound the alarm about the danger we face and made many insightful observations. But there was a big problem. Let's watch.
Either the great powers will find a way to accommodate and work together on our common problems like global warming, nuclear war, pandemics, and so on. Either they will find a way to accommodate or we all go down to disaster together. It's as simple as that.
If those are our only options, it is not looking good. Why? Because these divisions between the great powers are not just a matter of the whims of leaders like Biden, Putin, and Xi Jinping. Yes, they make policy decisions and can be compelled in certain circumstances to change those decisions. But fundamentally, these leaders are presiding over and dealing with the imperatives of a capitalist imperialist system driven by the competitive chase for profit and the commandment to expand or die. This leads to wars for resources, for markets, for control of trade routes in strategic parts of the world. In other words, hoping they find a way to accommodate and work together is a recipe for disaster. In point of fact, there is another option: revolution, to overthrow and replace this system with a completely different socialist economic and political system, based on meeting the needs of humanity, not the profit of a few. This is not the easy option, but it is the only option that can deal with the root causes of this. And it is possible. But while you're learning about and digging into this revolution, it is unconscionable for anyone to stand aside from what's in front of us now. Which brings me to point 4. This whole dynamic needs to be urgently and radically changed. Instead of standing by passively, hoping for the best, or even worse, cheerleading for this dangerous escalation, people need to be challenged and think deeply about the truth of these words from Bob Avakian. All this emphasizes why it is vitally important for the masses of people in this country and other countries allied with it, as well as in Russia, for people everywhere to finally and fully wake up now, recognize the real and profoundly heavy stakes involved, and act in accordance with our actual interests, the interests of all of humanity, demanding that this war in Ukraine and the involvement, direct and indirect, of the imperialists on both sides in this war be stopped before it not only causes even greater suffering for the people of Ukraine, but possibly escalates into a far more terrible conflict, which causes massive destruction and death on a whole other level, and even possibly poses a threat to the very existence of humanity itself. For a start, spread these slogans far and wide. Scream them at the top of your lungs. No US-NATO war with Russia. No World War III. It's this system, not humanity, that needs to become extinct. We don't accept their future. It's time to get organized for a real revolution.
Next, as I said at the beginning of today's program, Sunsara Taylor, the co-host of the RNL show, will speak on the struggle in Iran. And after that, Sunsara will speak to the abortion rights emergency in this country and the road forward.
Bet on your توی کوچه رقصیدن، برای ترسیدن به وقت بوسیدن، برای خواهرم، خواهرت، خواهرامون، برای تغییر مغزها که پوسیدن، برای شرمندگی، برای بیپولی، برای حسرت یک زندگی معمولی، برای کودک زباله‌گرد و آرزوهاش، برای این اقتصاد دستوری، برای
For dancing in the streets, for our fear when kissing loved ones, for my sister, your sister, our sisters, for the changing of rotted minds. These lines from a powerful song, Baraye, or Because, which the singer Shervin Hajipour stitched together from social media posts of people across Iran, give just a sense of some of the reasons the people there have filled the streets relentlessly for the last 4 weeks, even in the face of murderous repression. A righteous uprising that was sparked after the vicious murder of 22-year-old Mahsa Jina Amini at the hands of the fascist Islamic Republic of Iran's so-called morality police. Her crime? Allegedly wearing her hijab, the head covering that is mandatory for all women and girls aged 9 or older, improperly.
ما نره خشم هزار بی صداییم، شورشی کمریشه انقلابی داریم. عرب و آشوری، ارمنی، ترکمن، مازنی، سیستانی و بلوچ و تالش و تات و آذری، کرد و گیلک، لور، فارسی، قشقایی. ما اتحاد رودهاییم، دریاییم. ورزشکار و هنرمند، دست فروش تا کاسب، از محصل و معلم، مهندس تا کارگر، میکنیم کرگوش دیکتاتور رو با ساز حق، زن زندگی آزادی.
Don't call us rebels. We came for revolution. These lines from a rapper named Tumaj reflect the spirit, the courage, and the hope of this uprising that has captured the attention of the world. This uprising has brought people together across generations and nationalities, and from among all sections of the people. As the Communist Party of Iran, MLM, put it in a recent statement, with the murder of Mahsa Amini by the Islamic Republic's hated murder patrol, thousands of people rose up in dozens of cities and provinces, and Iran is once again witnessing a massive, widespread popular uprising. But this is a qualitatively different event from the magnificent popular uprisings of the last few years. This is the beginning of a situation that could lead to the overthrow of the Islamic Republic. This statement is titled Goodbye Garbage. It's a sarcastic reference to the song Hello Commander, which Iran's school children have been forced to sing, which praises Iran's supreme religious authority, the Ayatollah Khamenei. And it is beautiful to see these school children rising up, shouting down the Basiji, the religious authorities, and stomping the pictures of the Ayatollah that used to hang on their walls. It is beautiful as well to see this rebellion taken up by oil workers who went on strike and blocked the roads. To see digital warriors disrupt the official broadcast of the Islamic Republic with a picture of the Ayatollah on fire, with the faces of Mahsa Amini and others who have been killed in the uprising, and the words, "Join us and rise up. The blood of our youth is dripping from your claws."
نادر مهدوی که چند بار اسمش رو اینجا آوردید آقایون، کسی از دوستان ما که وارد در این موضوعات میگو اگر این نادر مهدوی
And to see women and men around the world standing up with those courageously rising up in Iran. At the same time, it's crucially important to understand what is pointed to in the same statement from the Communist Party of Iran, Marxist-Leninist Maoist, Goodbye Garbage, where they write, "We saw volcanic flames of anger and empowerment in the proud scenes of recent days. the start of a revolutionary process does not ensure its inevitable victory. The victory or defeat of this revolution depends on various factors. The key issue is that this time it should not be allowed to be diverted. In order to eliminate the source of all forms of oppression and exploitation, to bury the veil and oppression of women, to eradicate poverty, misery, and hunger, to eliminate national oppression and cultural and political tyranny, to save the environment, we have to overthrow the decadent Islamic Republic and over its ruins build an entirely different economic and social system, namely the new Socialist Republic of Iran. Too many times, it has been the case that masses have risen up, whether in Iran in 1979, or Egypt in 2011, or many other instances that could be cited, only to see one oppressive and reactionary regime replaced by another reactionary oppressive regime. This must not be allowed to happen here. For this reason, it is a great thing for humanity that there is a force in Iran, the Communist Party of Iran, MLM, that has the necessary orientation and is fighting to gain leadership and grow its leadership and influence to be able to take this struggle where it needs to go, to a real communist revolution that brings down and overthrows the Islamic regime and breaks firmly and fully out of the grip of the global system of capitalism, imperialism, most especially the domination by U.S. imperialism. We need to support them and strengthen their efforts, spreading the statements they have published everywhere we can. We have these statements posted at revcom.us. Go there, read them, get them out to others. But also, if you are living in this country, you need to take responsibility for actively opposing the efforts of your government to influence and divert this uprising towards its ends. Biden, the New York Times, and many other mouthpieces and actors of U.S. interests are working openly and no doubt behind the scenes to take things where they want them to go. But the U.S. is not a liberator, not in Iran and nowhere else. Go to revcom.us and read about the actual history of the U.S. in Iran. Read about how the U.S. backed a coup there in 1953 and then propped up the murderous and rightly hated Shah for more than a quarter century, and all the torture and the nightmare that this caused Iran's people. Read about how the U.S. stoked and fueled both Iraq and Iran in a bloody conflict, treating the people of both countries as cannon fodder and stealing the lives of hundreds of thousands of people over 8 years in order to maneuver for advantage in the region and against its rival at the time, the Soviet Union. Read about the crippling sanctions the U.S. has imposed on the people of Iran and the grinding poverty, the deaths and the misery this has caused and continues to cause by the day. And as for the U.S.'s claims of backing women, look no further than its decades of steadfast support for Saudi Arabia, which is every bit as women-hating and repressive as Iran. The fight to keep the U.S.'s bloody claws off the fate of Iran's people should not be left to Iranians to fight alone. We have to wage this fight here, and we must do so as part of preparing and organizing to fulfill our biggest internationalist duty to the people of Iran and the people of the world, making revolution here, bringing down this system in its most powerful bastion, lifting the weight and the terror of U.S. imperialism off the backs of the people of the world. It has now been over 100 days since the fascist-dominated Supreme Court overturned women's fundamental right to abortion. 15 states have already stopped providing abortions altogether. 22 million women and girls of reproductive age now no longer have the legal right to decide for themselves when and whether to have a child. And the Christian fascists who are driving this assault are not stopping. They are moving aggressively to criminalize all abortion for all women in all circumstances, to tell women that their aspirations, their plans, their dignity, and their physical safety, even their lives, mean nothing. They are aiming for a society that is far more suffocating and oppressive than even the worst of what most people today can imagine. And as was made clear when this fascist movement latched onto Donald Trump, the society they are fighting for, that they are rapidly advancing us towards, will also incorporate the crudest and most vile sexual degradation and misogynist violence alongside its sanctimony. The rage that millions felt the day they learned that the Supreme Court had obliterated the right to abortion. The fury that millions feel when they hear of women being forced to carry a dead fetus for 2 weeks because the doctor doesn't want to risk being sued for an abortion. The horror and the shock of learning that a court in Florida told a 16-year-old that she would be forced to have a child against her will because she was not mature enough to have an abortion. All this and more needs to be tapped into and called forward in massive struggle in the streets, outside this system's elections, and in opposition to the narrow terms that are set by these elections. There needs to be a sustained and society-shaking fight that tells the truth. Forced motherhood is female enslavement. Women need abortion on demand and without apology, legally, nationwide. With this in mind, we want to let our viewers know that this weekend, Rise Up for Abortion Rights will be holding a national forum via Zoom titled, "Voting is Not Enough. We Need Struggle in the Streets to Win Legal Abortion on Demand and Without Apology nationwide." This forum will feature Merle Hoffman, the CEO and founder of Choices Women's Medical Center, and myself. Both of us are co-initiators of Rise Up for Abortion Rights, and we'll be digging into these questions. What is driving this assault on abortion? How is it that after 50 years of precedent, women's constitutional right to abortion was overturned? Where is all this headed? You're being told that the only way to win back abortion rights is to row your vote in November. But will voting alone really stop this Christian fascist assault on women's lives? What could actually turn the tide and win legal abortion on demand and without apology nationwide? And how can you, wherever you are, whoever you are, be part of this struggle? The event will be emceed by Sam Goldman of the editorial board of Refuse Fascism. Patricia Wallin will present statements of solidarity from around the world, and Chantel, a national organizer with Rise Up and a member of the Revolution Club, will provide some orientation for organizing and some upcoming plans. Last Saturday, the Women's March held protests around the country, and it was very good that they did this, even as the main message they were pushing, that those who support abortion rights should focus their efforts on voting and mobilizing others to vote in this upcoming election, was dead wrong. It was important that Rise Up was out there at those protests alongside others. That said, it was not a good sign that the turnout to these protests was very small overall. So this online forum this Saturday will be an important step in giving people the understanding, the orientation, and the fighting plan they need to fight to bring forward the resistance that we need. It's also vitally important that Rise Up is fighting to come back even stronger in the face of vicious and baseless attacks that were leveled against it, and against the RevComs, and against the revolutionary leader Bob Avakian by woke opportunist wreckers of the so-called movement, who themselves didn't do shit to stand up against the overturning of Roe. Far too many people who had been part of Rise Up fell prey to these attacks. So if you are somebody who fell away in discouragement, you need to snap out of it. You need to realize that it is going to be a hard struggle, and there are no shortcuts. There is no easy way to deal with what has already happened and what is almost surely to happen if nobody stands up and fights. And if you are someone who left on bad terms, misled by people who hated Rise Up and the RevComs far more than they hated this system of oppression that is rapidly destroying women's lives and threatening much worse, you need to come to terms with the damage of what you got caught up in, the damage that did. You need to criticize it, and you need to get back into this movement while fighting to raise standards overall. So this is an invite to people new and old who are serious about wanting to stop this assault on women, to get into what it will take to wage this fight together. Rise Up for Abortion Rights is encouraging supporters to bring people together for watch parties at their homes and to spread the word very broadly, to use this event to organize others. And so we urge you to tune in and to spread the word about this event this Saturday, October 15th at noon Pacific Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And we will include a link to the registration for it in the description below. At the same time, we here at the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show challenge and invite everyone who cares about women's lives and fundamental rights and everyone who loves justice to not just join this fight for abortion rights, but to look deeply into the leadership and work of Bob Avakian, the revolutionary leader these opportunist haters want to scare you away from. Learn about the revolution he is fighting for. The truth is that the only way to fully and finally break all the chains that bind women and to bring into being a society and world where not only are women's fundamental right to abortion and birth control never again put up for a vote, but where all the chains of oppression and exploitation are being broken and dug up in a lasting and thorough way, is to make the kind of revolution that Bob Avakian is actively providing leadership for. Watch this show regularly. Spread it. Get into it as we unite broadly, shoulder to shoulder, in the fight for legal abortion on demand and without apology everywhere.
That brings us to the end of the RNL Show, episode number 123 on October 13th, 2022. And next week, as I said at the top of the show, we have a very special segment that you don't want to miss. This will be on Thursday, October 20th at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, and 8 p.m. in the East. A question about today's program to think about and to write us about is this. Who is the we that we speak about on the RNL Show? And what is the significance of that for humanity getting free? We want to close out today's show by sharing with you the full song that Sunsara played a portion of earlier from Shervin Hajipur called Baraye, or Because, which has become an anthem of protests across Iran. This song is being blasted out of car speakers on the roads in support of women who have cast off the hijab. It is being sung by protesters on the streets and in classrooms. It is hummed by strangers as they pass each other to show their commonality and support. It is being performed on stages around the world. And for this, Shervin was arrested by the Islamic Republic and the song removed from his Instagram account. He has since been released on bail, though he is barred from leaving the country for 6 months and stands accused of propaganda against the system and inciting people to violent acts. So here we're going to close the program with a Dutch dance company, DC058, presenting a dance to accompany this song, the lyrics of which are translated into English in subtitles. So with that, I want to say goodnight for myself, for Sunsara Taylor, and Rafael Kadaris, and the whole crew here at the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. See you next week.
برای توی کوچه رقصیدن، برای ترسیدن به وقت بوسیدن، برای خواهرم، خواهرت، خواهرامون، برای تغییر مغزها که پوسیدن، برای شرمندگی، برای بیپولی، برای حسرت یک زندگی معمولی، برای کودک زباله‌گرد و آرزوهاش، برای این اقتصاد دستوری، برای این هوای آلوده، برای ولیعصر و درختای فرسوده، برای پیروز و احتمال انقراضش، برای سگهای بیگناه ممنوعه، برای گریه های بیوقفه، برای تصویر تکرار این لحظه، برای چهره ای که میخنده، برای دانش آموزا، برای آینده، برای این بهشت اجباری، برای نخبه های زندانی، برای کودکان افغانی، برای این همه برای غیر تکراری، برای این همه شعارهای تو خالی، برای آوار خونه های پوشالی، برای احساس آرام پس از شبای طولانی، برای قرصای حساب و بیخوابی، برای مرد میهن آبادی، برای دختری که آرزو داشت پسر بود، برای زن زندگی آزادی، برای آزادی.